Your journey has been an interesting one up to here. You've questioned so much more than those around you. You've even questioned yourself as to how you could have grown into these thoughts. Am I crazy? When did I begin to think differently? Why do people in general appear so limited in their thought process? Rest assured, you are not alone. The world is slowly waking up to what you already know inside, yet can't quite verbalize. Welcome to the Spiritual Dope Podcast, the show that answers the questions you never even knew to ask, but needed the answers to. Questions about you, this world, the people in it. Most importantly, how do I proceed now moving forward? We don't claim to have all the answers, but we sure do love living in the question. Time for another hit of Spiritual Dope with your host, Brandon Hadley. Let's get right into today's episode.
Hey there, Spiritual Dope. I am on today with Jean Walters. She's the author of The Journey from Anxiety to Peace, Practical Steps to Handle Fear, Embrace Struggle, and Eliminate Worry to Become Happy and Free. Now, Jean has written a large number of other books and has, she's been at the forefront in this movement for personal transformation, clarity, and truth for over 40 years through her writings, consulting, coaching, and Akashic record readings, which we got to talk about. For people all over the world, she's been a consistent source of light, clarity, and inspiration. Jean's intention and commitment to deepest truth have brought her to share her wisdom and guidance to tens of thousands of clients and students. As a leading authority on metaphysics, she promotes deep spiritual connection and enlightenment. She has authored articles and columns in major newspapers and magazines all over the United States and is a best-selling author on Amazon.com. There's quite a bit more here, which will be part of the post, but your overall mission, Jean, is to lead people to light, to encourage, guide, and assist others to live freely and express from their highest selves.
Yes.
Thank you.
You said it.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for being on today. Really looking forward to the conversation. Have been for a little bit here now. One of the things you touched on in there is the Akashic record reading, and I think it's going to play really well into how I like to open these up, and that is there's somebody who is listening to this podcast today. And as you and I are designed more as like these vessels for energy to speak through, right? What is that message that somebody needs to hear from you today that's kind of sources speaking through you?
You know what? As we talk, they're going to find their message. So we'll probably cover a range of topics and ideas through this podcast, but something's going to stand out to each person that listens. At the end of every class, I say to the students, what was it that stood out to you tonight? And they always have something. And the point of it is that you're going to hear something different than maybe I do, but it's going to resonate to exactly where we are in life. And that always works. It always works because spirit is omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, and it's always there. We're in it, we're of it, we're living in it, we're breathing it. And so we're constantly being guided every single day to what it is that we need to understand, change, let go of, move forward with. The opportunities are there. So I hope people will email you and say, hey, this is what I heard. That would be wonderful for you. And then you pass that on to me and we'll both celebrate. How's that?
Absolutely. I love that. Right. There's nothing better than somebody reaching out to you and letting you know how you've impacted them.
Yes.
And to your point, you never know what it is that they're going to hear or receive. And they come back with some of the kind of uncanny things. You're like, wow, okay. I didn't hear that in the conversation, but I'm glad you did.
And people will call me like 40 years later and go, you said this and it changed my whole world. And I went, oh, well, that's cool. I don't remember saying it, but it sounds like something I would say.
Sure.
It's always thrilling when I get that kind of feedback.
That is, absolutely. So, let's talk a second about how you found yourself in this space to begin with. And I love the listeners to understand that. And a lot of us, myself included, I'm probably 3 or 4 years into this kind of journey myself. So I'm super curious to hear how you came into it and how you stuck with it and what that's done for you.
Yes, well, I had the opportunity to grow up with a very fear-based mother. And so she was constantly worried, constantly anxious, and pretty much a wreck. And today we would probably have diagnosed her and medicated her and, so forth. But back then, we didn't do any of that stuff. But she was everything. I would accuse her that you could make a hangnail into cancer, because everything was just disastrous. So I I didn't like it. And I was constantly trying to talk her out of it. And I was pointing out things that she could be happy about all the time. And so we were fighting, and we were like on opposite ends of things. But the thing that occurred to me is that I'm going to find another way. I'm going to find another way. In fact, I'm going to eliminate worry from my life. And that's exactly what my journey was started. I started reading and studying and finding ways. And this was before you heard about meditation and all. Now it's rampant, but this was before all that. And I went into some metaphysics classes. I learned to meditate. I read the Bhagavad Gita. I read the Life of Masters of the Far East. I just gobbled it up. But the thing is that I learned how to practice it, because I have a very practical side to me where I don't want to just hear about it and I don't want to just read about it. I want to do it. So that's how it moved me forward into a different kind of lifestyle. So I can say that I have eliminated worry from my life, because I see that there's another way to be. You can get above the things that are going on, and you can look at it from another dimension, and you can get your answers that way. But when people mire themselves, and I mean, that's the right word, mire themselves into trauma and drama and so forth, all they can see is more trauma and drama. And that's what was going on with my mother. So she was unwilling, I think, in many ways, she was unwilling to actually look at life from another point of view. But at the very end, she actually thanked me and was very respectful, which I thought was pretty amazing for someone like that. I saw her anxiety affecting her health, and I really knew that it was affecting all of us as a family. So anyway, I don't know. I think that was a gift in many ways, because it really motivated me to look beyond, to find other ways to dealing with life. And there are answers everywhere. I mean, Jesus gave us a lot of answers. So did Buddha, and probably every other master that we could study. They all had the same kind of answers to help us. So
I love it. When you say it like that, the idea, even like we already said, is that you've got Buddha, you've got Jesus, and they've got their kind of doctrine, if you will, or at least knowledge and wisdom that they passed on. But each person is kind of going to have a different approach to that, and they're only going to be able to hear maybe so much from one of those. So I think you need all those different flavors, if you will, so that everybody's able to kind of come at it from a different direction.
Well, they were kind of like the finger pointing in the direction, basically. I don't think they were here to be worshipped. In fact, I know for a fact that they did not, that was never their intention. But they pointed the finger in a direction, and the direction is really self-mastery. So that's, basically what I'm getting to more in this book is how to take control of your own mind, because your mind is the part of you that creates your experience. And if we're constantly looking at what if this and what if that and what I should be afraid of today, then we're going to constantly be creating, an experience of fear and drama and pain and suffering, which is unnecessary. But it's about discipline, because we have been surrounded with all kinds of negative messages. I mean, just all you have to do is turn on the TV for 5 minutes and you've got a half a dozen right there. So we have to choose very carefully who we allow in our life, what kind of activities we partake in, how we choose to look at these things. And, it's like, I think you and I were talking a little bit earlier that an opportunity can show up for us, to meet a certain person or to try a new experience. What I've learned to do is listen to my intuition and go, is this something I need to do? Is this right? And when it clicks, as I say, when it sort of clicks, then I move forward with it. And I think anybody can do that. It's not magic or anything, but we have to train our minds so that we're actually receptive. Also, people tend not to create goals. They don't decide this is, like I said early, I want to learn a way so worry is not even part of my life. And so that was a focus. And because of that focus, I took all the steps to move in that direction. It didn't happen overnight, but I learned. And I think that's the thing that people have to understand is that this is not like a lightning strike that hits you and all of a sudden you're aware. but it's a matter of steps, because we have to, in many ways, we have to move beyond the ideas and beliefs that we were taught. That's a big thing that I do, is I help people recognize where they got stuck. I mean, what kind of belief they bought into that has kind of, in many ways, messed up their life. And unworthiness is kind of a universal thing, and they base it on the craziest stuff, I'm unworthy just because I must be, because that's what I was taught. That's silly. That's really silly.
Yeah, and I like that. I mean, you talked about one in the book too. You talked about kind of putting yourself not first, right? Because some of you were maybe smarter or were able to come to answers ahead of others. So you learned a lesson. You thought the lesson then was, hey, I need to hold back and let the rest of the group catch up. You want to talk about that for a second, and maybe how you broke through that one?
Sure. Yeah. That was a very powerful remembrance that I had. And it was only a few years ago I remembered it. And then it kind of made sense to me how I had been conducting my life. But I'm a twin, and my twin sister was always a little bit behind on certain things like math and things like that. And so I was constantly like, Jean, teach Jane, Jean, she doesn't get it, work with her, So I learned how to be a teacher early in life. But one day, my mother, my sister, and we were together with our third grade teacher. And she said to my mom, Jean is ahead of the class and she could skip the next grade. But Jane is with the class and she's right where she needs to be. So I think you should hold Jean back, because it would embarrass Jane. So think about all the messages that were there. The message is Jane's embarrassment is way more important than Jean's moving where she needs to be. And so I was basically taught to be ahead, or to be in some way smarter, was not the thing that was going to be honored. What was going to be honored, and this was definitely honored in my family, the victim, the poor me person. That was the one that got the attention. So I disengaged early in life and became very independent because I saw this phenomena. I saw it early that, and I would even try to talk her out of it, like, Jane, you can do this. Of course you can do this. So later in life, I realized, oh my gosh, that's a phenomena that has taken hold in my life. Like, I hold back because I know the answer, but they don't. So I'll wait. And I have done that. I did that. It really made me very mad, which was a good thing, because I was mad at myself for buying into it. But of course, I was a kid at the time. And I think some of the people in your audience this is going to resonate to them. I really do believe. But at the same time, I thought, no more. I'm never holding back again. And so that became my credo from that point forward. Is like, if I feel an urge to take a trip or learn a new subject or speak in front of crowds or whatever, I'm doing it. And even if it scares the crap out of me, I'm going to go do it anyway. In fact, I'm going to do it twice as hard. So, yeah.
One of the things I heard in there, though, too, is you honored your anger almost a little bit, right? You had this energy. This is something that recently for me had always been dismissive, kind of like my anger or whatever. And more to your point, like when you grow up, your parents be like, well, you can't be mad at this, you can't be mad at that. So it's like a kind of a suppression, right? Well, like, I guess I won't be angry at this and I won't be angry at that. And man, I got mad the other day and it was, I just held it for a minute. I was like, you know what? I'm just angry, and that's okay. You know what? That's what that emotion is that I'm feeling. Yeah. And you can take it from there and redirect it, right? And kind of redirect that energy. But there's no sense in not acknowledging it for what it is to open this other door for you, right? That anger, that frustration, when you found it and acknowledged it, opened a new door for you.
Yes, it did. And also the other thing I would urge people to do is when they feel that anger, to ask themselves some questions. What am I really angry about? Because I could say I'm angry at my teacher, I'm angry at my mom, I'm angry at my sister. But really, it was me that took on the message and said, okay, now you have to hold back. They didn't say it. I said it to myself. And that's what happens with most people. They take something and then they internalize it and make it about themselves. And those are some of the things where when I work with someone, I can catch that and go, this is what I heard you saying. This is where you're telling yourself you can't move forward.
Right.
And when a lot of times when they just see it, it's like whammo, like for me, it was a breakthrough, and for them, it could be a breakthrough too. So we have a lot of breakthroughs in life if we learn to use them. I don't think anger is bad. I think it's really hard on you if you live in anger.
Sure. Well, I mean, again, like, so it was I'd been dismissive of anger, right? And kind of like I had like a wall off from accepting or acknowledging the emotion versus, oh, okay, that's anger, and to your point, where's that coming from? Why am I feeling it? Am I angry at me or the situation? Right. Just the whole thing.
You could even pretend. What do I believe that I'm angry about?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and it gives you the opportunity to kind of take one step back away from it. Yeah. And I love that you kind of talk about this in the book too.
Anger is powerful.
Yeah.
So it's very powerful. And what I notice about anger is people get angry when it's time to take a step forward. Anger is like something that serves you if you use the power of it to move forward.
Yeah. It's just making me think of the thrust of wings, right? Like your first lift off, right? I'm just going to get angry and lift off out of here. So
it's a sign, really. Yeah.
I like that too. So, I mean, and one of the things though too, anxiety, that your book is kind of covering anxiety, right? How to go from anxiety to another. And one of the ideas that struck me, and I'm not sure if this will strike you or not on anxiety, but like to me, anxiety is kind of like this energy source and not being able to direct it right appropriately. And so you're just kind of like, ooh, what do I do with all this? And then having no internal or external appropriate quote unquote direction causes this anxious thing happening. Does that make sense?
Oftentimes it's being in it, whatever the in it is, But one thing I would say, and I say to give you an immediate change, is if you're sitting, then get up. Or if you're inside, go outside. Whatever you're doing, stop that and do something different. Just shift it. Shift the energy. And just like that, you'll get some relief. But once you let go of what you're doing and where you're at, then you can actually move your mind to a higher place. Like imagine that you're sitting on top of a mountain and you're looking down at the problem, whatever you think the problem is, and you're just sitting there observing it without any feeling, just watching it. Your mind will now be open to some other ways of dealing with. Some possibilities will come through. But we have to shift our mind to get out of that mindset first. And most of the time we're anxious because we're feeling helpless but the truth of the matter is you're never really helpless. You can always do something different, even if it's like stop everything, go to the gym for a while, or just get outside and take a short walk, 5 minutes. You'll come back. You'll have a new, fresh mind. Your mind will always channel your answers if you discipline your mind to be able to do that. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I do. So I think you talked about it in the book too, right? And I'll give you just my perspective and see, we'll play off of that if that's okay. Just kind of, your consciousness, like what we're imminently aware of, like I can see you, you can see me, and we can hear this conversation, but to leverage it as kind of a filter as to kind of what you accept. So that's like we'll call it the 5%, right? That's my active brain. And then my subconscious is the rest of my brain, like another 95% of is like, this is the thing that breathes my breath, does my blood, grows my hair, I don't know how to do any of that, but I'm doing it, right? So once I realize that I'm doing all these super powerful things already, I'm like, well, why don't I toss this question that like this 5% of like my brain that's like, there's a squirrel type stuff, right? I'm like, all right, why don't I toss, the one that's got the capability to breathe the breath and do all these things. I'm going to toss the question to that.
Yeah.
And just walk away because I don't know. Is that, so how is your approach similar, or where would you, I'm sure yours is different, but I'm just curious.
Oh, no, I love that. But because it's like getting into the not knowing is what I call it. Getting into not knowing is powerful. And the reason it's powerful is because we open our mind to the field that knows. But we can't open our mind to the field that knows as long as we're going, well, I know what I have to do, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and this is the way we've always done it, and so forth. And all we're doing is on the gerbil wheel going around and around. So if you go to not knowing and go, I don't know. And I just think there's tremendous power in that. My method is to meditate. And so basically what I'm doing is going into my 5%, as you would call it, into my 5% and just yielding to it and allowing myself to just live in that spaciousness, because it's very spacious, and to just be there. And whether if I have a question, okay, but sometimes I just go there to be in the spaciousness. What it does is condition your mind. Then it conditions your mind, and your mind is way bigger than your brain, by the way. But I know you know that. It conditions you to be able to live in the spaciousness all the time. So a lot of people don't understand it because it's very nebulous. I mean, there's not a form to it, and we like to have forms to everything. But anyway, once we learn to practice that, you'll notice that people who meditate regularly are calmer. They don't tend to be reactive so much. They just healthier because the blood pressure goes down. I mean, all of that's been documented. But I love your idea about go to the 5% and just listen to that for a while. When you meditate, after a while, your intuition gets stronger and stronger. We all have intuition. Everybody does. But it gets stronger and stronger to where you're really learning how to listen to it all the time.
Oh, thank you. And then, kind of the idea of, what you focus on, right? I mean, that's the other thing too, right? If you focus on that victimhood, what happens, right? And then how let's talk a little bit about that and maybe how you've gotten some clients to shift.
Well, first of all, you have to point it out to them. And if they're real attached to it, they don't like it if you point it out. But I feel like my job is my job. And if they come here, then they're ready for me, So you have to point out that, oh my gosh, you sound very much like a victim, and you're letting this person run you. And I pointed out a lot, I mean, people do it. Like you're letting the news run you right now, and you're letting the politics and what everybody's saying run you. I had a little girl in here. She's 18, very cute. And she said, I asked her a question about how do you feel about that? And she said, well, I'll have to talk to my friends. And I go, no. I don't want a consensus. I only want to hear what you have to say about it. What do you feel? And she was like a deer in the headlight. Oh my God. She was so not used to just coming from her own heart. But when I said, I'll wait, just tell me what you think, she did. And she was so clear and so perfect. And I was hoping that was the moment she walked away with, that she doesn't need a consensus to figure out what she feels. So, but I think that's kind of typical. I hear it a lot, like, well, so-and-so said this and so-and-so said that. I went, and what are their credentials now?
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, look, we've been conditioned to look for others for answers all the time, right? Yeah. Go through school. Everybody else in front of you has got the answers. Yes. You're at home, your parents have the answers for what's best for you. And even as a parent, right? Like I realize I don't have the best answers for my own children, right? Like, but that's how we grew up, right? That's kind of how we grew up. And I think that, I'd be curious on your take too. Are you seeing from, you've been at this for a little bit now. Are you seeing a pickup, a rise in consciousness and awareness? I like the word awareness, I think, more. Are you seeing a rise?
I do. I think this whole time period that we're in right now is chaotic, but the thing about it is we're moving as a whole quantum field. We're moving into a different part of our growth. We're changing from a very masculine, very aggressive kind of energy into a calmer, more nurturing energy. And it's kind of a mess. I mean, we're moving from one to the other. We're not in one completely. We're not in the other completely. So it's kind of mixed up right now, but it's all moving. And if we look around, we go, there's people being very kind. There's people. Here's something I hear all the time. I'm simplifying my life. I'm giving everything away. I don't want to have all this stuff anymore. And I think that's a sign. That's the sign. And I hear it at least every day, that people are just moving into a simpler energy. They don't want to be cluttered anymore.
Right.
Yeah, they don't want to be owned by what they own.
Talk about that. I mean, because the things that you have basically own you, right? And that or identify you.
You have to take care of them. They're taking space in your house.
Right.
You're paying for their space that they're sitting in a box on the shelf. That'll never be
Lots
used.
of boxes. Lots of boxes. One of the things that you've got in the book, and I really enjoyed too, and I think you touched on it for a second, is that in your spiritual nature, you are also perfect, right? We talk about, and this reminds me of a line that I heard from Bob Proctor a lot. It's just like, your spiritual DNA is perfect.
Yes.
Right. So
Exactly.
What do you mean by that? And how can I begin to use that as a seed for my own greatness?
What a lovely question. When you see a baby, you see pure light and energy. You see love. You see inquisitiveness. You see adventure. You see what is this and what is that and how does it work and I want to do it. And you see joy and laughter, right? That's our true nature. And so what we tend to do is look at our body, we look at our things, we look at our form, and then we judge, well, my nose is too big or I'm losing hair or whatever it is we make up in our mind. And we make that, this thing about finding something wrong with you. I mean, a lot of that has been grown out of religion, as a matter of fact. But as pure energy, and when in the Bible it says God made light and called it good. And if quantum physicists look deep, they say take a microscope and look deep into everything, every substance, and what you'll find is light. So that means if you look inside of us, you're going to find light. I've seen it since I was a little kid, the light. But so that's who we are. We are the light. But we've taken on all these other identities. So when we're a rebel, for instance, then we're living out of rebelliousness, which can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how we use it. But we're forgetting that who we are as a being is perfect. So that means when we come from love, we're perfect. But we're always perfect. As a spiritual being, we're always, always perfect. It's when we identify with something beyond that, that's when we get in trouble. That's when we look at ourselves and find fault and judgment and so forth. Does that make sense? Is that clear?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I enjoy that. It's just, so once you realize that, once you realize that, applying that, right? And so I think, for an example, what I did was once I realized that, I used that as a seed for just to let my spirit grow, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not necessarily make myself feel better about anything, but just to realize that creature of divinity, creature of the light, right? Yeah. Type of thing. And again, spiritual DNA is perfect. So what am I growing? I'm not going to sit here and say I'm perfect.
You're growing in consciousness to have that awareness that you are at every moment, that perfect self.
Yeah.
And that means if you fall off your bike, you just get back up and get on your bike. It doesn't mean anything about you. Okay. It doesn't mean you're a bad bike rider or that you're a klutz or anything else. It just means you fell off your bike.
Sure.
That's all.
That's just the situation.
That's how we want to look at life, is that, we define ourselves too much at the times by what we did or did not do. And it's good to learn from those things, but it's not okay to define yourself as a loser or even a winner, because that's a definition again, and every definition limits ourselves. Right now, if we say we're a Republican, a Democrat, we're an independent, we're limiting ourselves, because then we have to fit into that mold, whatever we dream up that mold to be. And we're more than that. We're more than that. So I think this whole idea that we have our spiritual DNA is perfect is realizing that whatever direction we go, we're going to find our way. Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit too, because I really love that you hit on that in the book as well. Kind of no matter what choice you make, you're going to be okay. Right? So let's talk to the audience a little bit about that, and maybe some examples of where you've seen that play out for yourself.
Well, divorce. I mean, the first time I got a divorce, it was like, oh my God, it was a stigma. And yet at the same time, and I work with so many people, in fact, almost there's more divorced people than there are people who are long-term married, that allowed, I feel like there's a theme and a purpose to every marriage and every relationship, for instance. And that when maybe it's to help you that my first marriage was to help me become very strong and independent, and to learn how to be responsible. I have 4 kids, so there was a lot of responsibility there, and I learned it. But there was a point at which I needed to grow beyond that, and I was not going to be able to. I was going to be held back. So it was time to move on and find another way. So is that a failure? Is that a success? What is it? And it to me, it's like, it's not even falling off your bike. It's just realizing this particular part of the pathway is now complete. And I like the idea of going, you completed that, graduated from that. And because I think that's a more accurate way of looking at things than to say, oh, that was so sorry, that failed for you. And it didn't fail. It was a great success. I was even confronted someone on the radio, and he said, oh, well, you're just saying whatever you're saying because your marriage failed. And I said, I didn't have a failure of a marriage. My marriage was perfect. It got me exactly where I needed to be, and hopefully him too, depending on his willingness, But I think that's a really typical example for a lot of people. And the same thing is true with jobs. I've seen people, there was a fellow I met who was a head engineer at this company, and he had been there a long time, and he was going to be a lifer. And something happened in the company and it went down, the buck fell on his desk. And they said, you're fired. You can't be here anymore. And first of all, he grieved. And then he said, wait a minute, I've always wanted to start my own company. And he said, I never would have done it as long as I was in that situation. And so he started his own company, was very, very successful. So I think that's how I look at things that happen for me and with other people, is that there's beginnings and there's endings. There's always beginnings. And the first time I did a lecture, I was a total mess. But I was scared. And so what I did was, of course, I did it. And it was not very good. But each time then I went out to do a lecture, I asked myself, so what exactly happened just then? And when did you get comfortable? And what made you comfortable? And when I started answering those questions and looking at the whole experience, I realized when I decided to shift my attention to the audience and not to me, I was fine after that. So that's why I think transitioning in experience is a wonderful thing, because you can learn so many beautiful truths by just observing it and asking yourself some in questions. But the second you start judging it, then you're kind of lost, because now it's a bad experience. I've heard people tell me that being sick was the best thing that ever happened to them, because they realized they weren't doing what they really wanted to do. And one fellow told me he decided to become a clown. And he said, I've always wanted to be a clown. And so he decided to become a clown because he got sick. And he realized, I can't waste my life anymore. So those are the things that I just really get a lot of inspiration from that, And that's kind of how I've conducted myself.
If you're sick, you're not doing what you should be doing, realign yourself. And so I think that's also a lot of fun. And I think that there was, another similar relationship that you mentioned in the book too, that I thought was pretty cool, right? Like there was a woman who had grown past like kind of the relationship, but it was herself that needed the focus. And so she gave herself the focus. And it was just within that time that, she became happier and kind of let go of some other aspects in the relationship that she'd been giving energy and attention to, and therefore had a happier relationship.
Yes.
Right?
It happens all the time. It happens all the time, Brandon. And because we were so sort of programmed with this idea that we're here for everybody else. And I love the idea of service. But I think the first person I serve is me, because there's no way I can serve anyone else if I haven't nurtured the quality of wisdom within my own self, So my mother was a great martyr, and we all three of the girls learned martyrdom well. But I would catch it and go, oh my God, that's my mother. And, and I'd have to stop and reevaluate and go, well, how much do I give, and how do I give and what really works for me? Because I am a giver, but I don't want to exclude myself in the process because that's part of what made her sick. And it makes everybody sick.
That's right. So, kind of what you're saying too, and you also said this in the book. Give like friendship, right? Mm-hmm. Give of yourself, and I love the, and I forget where I heard it, but you are the giver and the gift,
yes.
Right? So. What does that mean to you? And just share that with the group.
Yes. We have energy coming in through us all day long. It comes in through us. And then our job is to give it out. Okay. So we can give it out through a smile, and we can give it out through applause, or we can give it out through supporting someone, or we can give it out through writing a book or doing a podcast. We're giving out energy. And so if we don't know how to do that well, if we're not following our own inner voice, and if I'm an artist, I want to give art. If I'm a counselor, I want to give help and wisdom and support. So when we're listening to that, we're giving it. But what happens is the energy comes right back into us. Only it's multiplied. So giving is a very powerful thing, and the giver is the one that gets the most out of it. But what we're giving is whatever I am is what I'm giving. So I'm giving nurturing, I'm giving kindness, I'm giving love, I'm giving support. Somebody else is giving their artistic ability, or someone else is giving their fantastic on how to fix cars. They can listen to an engine and go, I know exactly what it is. I think that's a huge gift. I think somebody else is giving, they know how to grow vegetables like crazy, and then they do that and give that. So we're giving all the time. We're giving of who we are. And that's exactly perfect. That's exactly what we're here to do. So you're not to, there was a story of Norman Vincent Peale. You remember him, Power of Positive Thinking? And he told a story about this young man he was working with, and the young man had failed at the insurance business 3 times. Why was he in the insurance business? Because his dad was very good at the insurance business, and he wanted his son to succeed. But he forgot to notice that his son was not an insurance man. So what Peale was noticing is while he was talking to this kid, he was feeling the wood on the table next to him. And he made a comment. He said, I notice you're feeling that wood on the table. What is it about that? And he said, I love wood. I absolutely love wood. I love building with it. I love making furniture out of it. I like designing furniture. I love it. And he said, well, why aren't you doing that? So the kid got permission to follow his heart and do what he loved. And he was wildly successful building this furniture. So to me, the gift was his beautiful creativity, ability, his skill, and what he received back was appreciation, love, money, whatever. And, but he prospered because of that, because he was alive now, giving away what he was.
Right. And I love that. And you talk about it in the book as well, is the idea of kind of just doing what you love and not chasing the money for it. And yeah, I'm guilty just as much as the next person, especially with social media, Instagram, all the go do this thing that you love and monetize it. Go do this thing that you love and monetize it.
Yeah.
And just trying to let that go. What, kind of walk somebody through that. How do you detach yourself even from the monetization aspect of it, knowing, I think again too, that everything's gonna be okay. Just go do what you love. I mean,
I think it becomes a natural movement. I don't think you have to plan on, I'm going to make a lot of money with this furniture. I think it becomes a natural movement. Like, I love your chair. Will you build me a chair like that? And I want to give you money for it. Okay, great. I'll do that. And so I think it becomes a natural thing. It did for me anyway. I was teaching a lot, and my students would always come to me and want counseling. And then one person said to me, why don't you, that's really your job. I mean, that's really what you're here to do. Why don't you just do it and get paid? And I went, well, it made sense to me because I realized that when people pay for it, they receive it. Have you noticed that?
Well, yeah, there's a big piece in there too, right? You'll see the flip side of this where people will, say, hey, I'm going to charge for something such as spiritual coaching, right? We're like, well, you don't need to charge for that. Well, if you don't set a value for it, then people won't value it. And it's not just, and listen, that to me is more of a, just a socio kind of setting that we're in, right? And if I don't charge you for it, then it's going to go on the shelf with everything else.
Exactly. And that's what I noticed, because when I first started teaching, I wasn't charging for classes. And then I noticed they weren't taking it seriously. Mm-hmm. When I started charging for the classes, everybody started doing the things I asked them to do.
And the results were probably, twice as effective, right? I mean, if I give you something for free and you don't use it, how useful is that?
Yeah. And it's also frustrating for the teacher.
100%.
Because what am I doing? I'm sharing you this beautiful stuff and you're not doing anything with it, But to get to your point, though, I think it happens organically. I mean, I think that when I have a fellow that was going to the junkyard and picking up pieces of interesting metal, and then he would solder them together or whatever you call that, and make these art pieces. And he loved doing it. But at some point, he decided to take him to an art fair. At some point, he's selling his art pieces. So I don't think that you have to start out with the idea like, I'm going to make $1 million this way, but I think it comes organically, No,
that makes sense, right? People start doing their art as kind of and again, getting rid of the idea of a side hustle or putting pressure on yourself to create, right? And I think that's another piece that start winding it down here with, the idea that you need to create, your experience here, your spiritual, everything boils down to the need to self-express, self-actualize, and create. Let's talk to people about that.
Well, and even as a dad, as a creative experience that, when your son asks you a question, you'll have to ponder, or maybe you want to take them someplace and then there's maybe something that you're instructing them with that. But it's a creative experience. Even like when they're crying and you just hug them, that's a creative experience. So, we are creative beings and we're constantly emitting our channeling. Channeling is a great word, our creativity. And so we just do what comes naturally and we're really good at it, like you.
Well, so I remember talking to somebody, I was coaching somebody and I said, hey, you're very creative. And she goes, well, I'm not creative. I don't know how to draw. I don't know how to do this. And, breaking out of that paradigm that creativity is bound to paint, that is bound to a musical instrument. And to your point there, you're saying creativity is creating a moment, right? Creating an instance where it's memorable. It doesn't even have to be memorable. You are the creator of that, right?
Yeah, and take it to another level is that where are you focusing your mind? What are you creating today? Are you focusing on everything that's gone wrong in your life? Then you're just creating more of that. If you focus on your appreciation, joy of everything that you've experienced, everything that's right in life, you create more of that. Wherever you put attention on grows. And so that's, I guess, the biggest message I'd like to give out is that pay attention to what you're focusing on, because that is what's going to grow in your life.
I love that you bring that up because I'm just I had some highlights in the book right while I was reading, and right there what you're saying too is stop focusing on negativity. But I have this line highlight. It's the moral is that if you are removing negativity from your thinking, be sure to grow something new in its stead. And I think that may be a piece that is often left out in that conversation. Like, oh, if I just focus on, so talk to me through that one.
Yes. The mind is always full of ideas and such. And so if we say we're going to create this empty mind when we meditate, no, you're not. What you're going to do is in the beginning, and you might get there eventually, but your mind is always busy. So if you don't choose where you're going to focus, then it will keep going back to what you've always focused on. So you're really training the mind. It's about training the mind to be where you want it to be. Arnold Schwarzenegger, I just think he's an amazing example of this. He was born in Austria, and he decided he didn't want to stay there, but he went to a cowboy movie And he decided, I'm going to be an American cowboy. And so from that point on, he focused everything he did toward that goal. And he said, people would tell me all the time, it's impossible. He said, I didn't pay any attention. They'd tell me, you couldn't do it. Didn't pay attention. Your accent is too thick. Didn't pay attention. And he took the English lessons. He did the bodybuilding thing. He found his way. People started supporting him. He got to the U.S. I mean, focus. And he refused to any idea that he wasn't going to make it. And I think that is so powerful. But that was the way he chose to focus his mind. And when we do that, that's amazing. I mean, we can move mountains. So we have to recognize when we're off the track. And then we have to recognize we are off the track and move ourselves on the track. What is it you want now? How can you begin to focus now? What's one step you could take today that will move you in that direction? Anything. Write a letter, send an email, make a phone call, something. Get busy. And when you do that, you move toward the goal. The universe works that way. Whatever you focus on increases. The universe completely supports you in that. And so when people are worried about being sick, guess what happens, And so it's so important and it's so relevant right now that we decide what we want to focus on and keep moving. Just keep moving.
Yeah, the big part in there, right, is just to take that first step and make it be a small one. That's fine, right? Because just any action into the direction of your dreams, your desires, whatever you feel like calling it, to me anyways, signals the universe was like, okay, I'm ready, right? Let's start. One of the things that is newer to me, and I'm curious on your take on this, is the idea of surrendering to the universe. Yeah. Right? If I surrender to the universe, I surrender to the universe, I'm like, okay, give me all the things or do all the things. And like, I'm not going to try and direct you because the universe has a greater idea and more experience than I do with spirit overall. Right. But how do you pair that up with like setting goals or like, trying to make a direction? I think that's an interesting one. What's your take?
I love that. Thank you for asking that question. That's great. So we set a goal like Arnold, who's a great example. I'm going to be an American cowboy. I'm going to be in the movies. And then he surrendered to how it was going to happen. But everything that walked across his path that looked like a way to get there, he took advantage of it. So that's what we do, is that we set our intention. For me, it was, I want to live in this energy of this higher self. I want to live there, and I want to help other people live there. So then I look at a class, and a class might show up, and I go, is that part of my journey? I look at a relationship and ask, is that part of, am I aligned with this? In my focus, is this part of my alignment? And then we get those answers. We begin to see that all of those things show up because they're in alignment with what we've focused on. But he didn't say, well, it has to be through bodybuilding, or it has to be that bodybuilding magazine showed up, and he went, I'm going to do that. And that was part of his journey. So I think he's a great example of seeing he knew what he wanted, and he didn't know how he was going to get there. But as things showed up, he would take advantage. So that's what surrendering to the universe is all about. I don't know how I'm going to get there. You don't know how you're going to get there. So we acknowledge that. And in so doing, we create mental space to go, so what's the next opportunity?
That's great. I think it sounds a little bit like the line of, looking for the evidence of it happening, right? And also, I guess it, I don't know about for you, but for me, I've got to have this kind of mentality of, this is a benevolent universe. I'm here for a reason and a purpose. This is my intention going forward. And now I'm going to look for the evidence that the universe is kind of setting that up for me.
Well, if you think about your son and say you're I don't know how old he is, but you're going to teach him how to throw the basketball or something, or ride a bike, that you start with getting him on the bike, and maybe you're holding the bike. But at some point, he's now balancing pretty well, and you can kind of push the bike forward, and he's got it. So to me, if you look at that as an example, that's exactly what the universe does for us. It's teaching us through different modes and modalities, how to get on the bike and ride it, without crashing. So.
Sure. Well, is there anything else out of the book that you want to hit on while we're here?
The main thing that I am saying in this book is you can make a choice.
Yeah.
You can make a choice that if you want to live in a joyful life, you can choose that, and then do the things that are necessary. There's practical steps in every chapter in the book. So you would start on one step, start on another step, but get started and start moving your mind and your energy in a way so that you are living the life you really want to live. It's your choice. You have dominion. That's the main thing I wanted to teach with this book. That's
powerful. I think that, choice, it's funny because I have it written down here to kind of hit on choice. But, learning to make that choice, finding that awareness is kind of where the power is at. The funny thing about that is, for me anyways, through my journey, I thought I was always making choices, but what I was really doing was accepting others' choices for me. Yeah. Right? That's what we do. We start out that way because we don't even know that we can make a choice. Right. And then sometimes the parents these days are going, well, do you want to do volleyball or do you want to do soccer? So there is a choice involved. But before that, we're just told, do this, go show up at this time and whatever. So we do have to kind of teach ourselves along the way. We really are our best teachers. Man, for the people that haven't figured that part out yet, like what is something look at your life. Just look at your life and go, how is my life right now? Where am I happy? Where am I not? Mm-hmm. Begin to look at that and go, what choices got me to this point and what would I like to change? And then what are the choices I need to make in order to move in another direction? Just look at your life. Your life will tell you exactly what your choices have been. And that is no judgment at all. Just observe it like you're observing somebody else's life. And then ask yourself some questions, does this fit me? Because sometimes we stay in things so long that they don't fit anymore. And then it's not serving anybody to stay in something that's over, it's finished. Right. People die in their jobs. I mean, they have dead eyes. Yeah. Hey, listen. That was it's me in my 20s. I was at a job, and it was a fine paying job. It was a corporate job. There was money. There was benefits, but what there wasn't was living. Yeah. I looked around everybody, and I saw that everybody's kind of walking around like zombies, like you're talking about, glazed over. Yeah. And I said to myself, I was like, if this is going to be like the end game, I was like, it can wait. Yeah. I'll come back. Right. This isn't where I'm going to spend my youth. And I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't. Kudos to you though. I mean, really kudos to you because you went for you had a lot of money at the job, and a lot of people will stay for that. And they're literally dying inside. Yeah. But they have money. Sure. It's like believing that you can't have money doing anything. I mean, I feel like money is one of the easiest things to get. Sure. But well, hey, share that one with people because I mean, how did you develop that mindset? Well, you've got to get past the unworthy stuff. I mean, you've got to get past this idea that you're a limited being. Like Arnold, he grew up in Austria, for heaven's sakes. He didn't even know English. Right. Those were limitations by a lot of people's estimation, but he decided no. So I think it's how we look at things. I mean, a lot of people just don't feel like they deserve to have an amazing life, but they're I call it the yellow brick road. You get, you grow up, you graduate, you get your education, you get married, you have kids, and it's like wait for retirement. And it's no, it's a road to death. Sure, yeah. I always want people to look a little higher than that. Like those are all great things in their turn if they're right for you. Sure. And they're not right for everybody. Right. We can't make it a across the board formula. But I think that's what we have done culturally. Right. And you're measured by that. Like, no. No. You don't get to be measured by that. How many toys do you have? You probably have more toys than I do. So does that mean you're more successful than I am? No. Right.
if success is joy?
Yeah. I mean, look, you got to have some joy, right, in your life.
What if the most, I think about Mahatma Gandhi, didn't have any money.
Right.
Jesus didn't work on money, Buddha didn't, he was rich, but he gave it all up.
Sure.
So all of these great masters, I mean, and Martin Luther King didn't work to have $1 million. He didn't do that. He had a mission.
Sure.
So all of these great masters were telling us that, money was not their end point. And it doesn't, but I don't think money's a bad thing. I don't want to give out the wrong message.
Oh yeah, no. But
it can't be the thing.
Right. And more to what you were saying before, right? Do what you love and kind of the money will follow. But when you're talking about these other people, when you're talking about the masters, and you're talking about Martin Luther King, what they did have was something greater than themselves in their purpose.
And they were fed and they had whatever they needed. I mean, Nelson Mandela is another great example. I mean, money was not the end all, but he had what he needed. I mean, he never went hungry. So that's how life is. We can't make money the goal. We can make it something to enjoy.
No, 100%. And it's funny because, we have this conversation with my children too, right? They're like, hey, I want to get a good education so I can get a good job so I can do it. I stop them. I'm like, wait, you want to provide value, right? So, I mean, just kind of flip the script a little bit. Yeah, I want you to make money and earn money. Absolutely. But I want you to do it because you're providing value and what problems do you want to solve? Whatever, I have those conversations with the children. So this has been a blast. I've enjoyed it. I want to say thank you for, it was your assistant that reached out to me, but you took the call when I called you back and enjoyed our conversation that first time. I've enjoyed this conversation, and you've got plenty of other books for people to go to check out on Amazon. But this one, The Journey from Anxiety to Peace, is it out there now? Is it released?
It's available. It's actually an international bestseller.
Look at you.
Does that tell you anything about the world?
They're ready for you.
It tells me there's a lot of anxiety.
Congratulations! Yeah, there's a lot of anxiety, and I think this is a great book. And like you said, you've got in the subtext, right? Practical steps to handle fear, embrace struggle, and eliminate worry. And you did. You had a lot of great tips in there, just like you had the practical applications here in the conversation as well.
Thank you so much, Brandon. This was fun, and I really appreciate it.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Spiritual Dope Podcast. Stay connected with us directly through spiritualdope.co. You can also join the discussion on Facebook, Spiritual Dope, and Instagram at spiritual_dope. If you would like to speak with us, send us an email through brandon@spiritualdope.co. And as always, thank you for cultivating your mindset and creating a better reality. This concludes the most thought-provoking part of your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay fully up to date. Until next time, be kind to yourself and trust your intuition.